Hello, and welcome to another episode of Founder Exchange. As you can see, we're here in a beautiful new set that we just built for this show. And my guest today is Chelsie Lee, who is the CEO and the founder of Shipsi, which is a very exciting last mile logistics infrastructure startup. So welcome, Chelsie.
Hello there. Thank you. Excited to be here today and absolutely love what you're doing.
Thanks. So tell me a bit more about how you made your way into the world of logistics.
I will tell you that it definitely wasn't on purpose. I wasn't set out as a small girl to on a mission for the logistics space, but really an opportunity fell into my lap. And I have a background in retail, buying and planning, both internationally and domestically, followed by a lot of experience within the supply chain space specific to different technology and systems. And it was a friend of mine who called and said, "I'm working on a project. Can you take a look for me?" That led to me basically telling him, "This looks good, but we need to rip it apart, flip it inside out and upside down." Was really the original story or concept of it.
And so what is Shipsi today?
So we partner with retailers so that they can keep up with today's consumer demands. We provide them with on-demand, same day, next day, and scheduled delivery, appearing natively at checkout next to all the other shipping options or in an in-store instance through their point of sale system. And behind the scenes, we're aggregating delivery network partners on their behalf and then providing real-time tracking notifications throughout the entire journey for their end consumers. So really, we're this layer between retail and delivery networks, making it a safe playing environment or providing a treatment strategy between each of the conduits.
So basically, I'm going to kind of repeat back what you said from a brand's perspective, and you have many, many brands and retailers who are your customers. They install something on their own site that gives them the ability to offer customers delivery through either last mile delivery companies that specifically do this, or Uber sometimes, or any other option that's sort of available to get a product to someone in like 30 minutes to an hour. Is that sort of
exactly.
correct?
Exactly. So we work with Postmates, DoorDash, last mile delivery networks, but we also work with large capacity partners with some batching capabilities, for example. So to get started, depending on what type of the brand or how big the brand is, it's just like adding any other shipping option within your natively in your website, or installing our app in the Shopify store, for example, or connecting to our API. And then we filter business rule criteria alongside of that to make it a really safe playing environment for both retailers and delivery networks. So for example, not sending a guy on a bike to deliver a couch, for example. So we have visibility onto the inventory or align the right vehicle with the appropriate merchandise. And then also consolidate and normalize a lot of the nuances with delivery networks like signature and confirmation, and then streamline that through our notifications, sometimes branded, co-branded with the brand or retailer.
Right. And tell me about the company itself. How many people are you? How much have you raised?
Yeah, so we've raised a few $1,000,000. It was a long journey to originally get there, but we closed a seed round in October of 2018, had a couple of different leads that participated within that, and then really had our first pre-launch in December of 19, or about almost 2 years ago. And that was a whirlwind for us. We were growing 20 to 200% week over week, and it was very exciting. We learned a lot of really hard lessons and a lot of the things about retail and where it's going, especially given the current market today.
And you guys also, did you go through Techstars? Did you raise money from Techstars? Is that right?
We did participate in Techstars. Yeah, and we also did New York Fashion Tech Lab, which is part of Springboard Enterprises. In between those two, I felt like we were really, really set up for success.
So Chelsie, you've had a couple jobs. As you mentioned, you're working in retail as a buyer, and I think you had a sales job as well. Tell me, what was it like to make the transition from working as an employee to running your own company?
The transition was mysterious to me. Coming from corporate America, coming from buying and planning in retail, and then really getting into technology and a more operational role as part of that, I had the opportunity to work with some really amazing mentors at SPS Commerce who really taught me sales from the ground up and gave me a chance on it. In fact, one of them is actually a Shipsi advisor today. And so through that transition, we had made several acquisitions. So incredibly naive at the time, but I basically got to build a startup within the four walls of a publicly traded company, which gave me some good experience. But then starting Shipsi, it was not having access to a legal team, for example, or marketing resources, or even things like creating your CRM, like all of those basic things I think you take for granted a lot of times in corporate America in the beginning. So really, I would say my transition was jumping in 2 feet first. There's a lot of people that argue that first-time founders maybe don't know as much of what they're doing, but I actually believe that it works to our favor or to our advantage in a lot of cases because we are so naive to how hard it's going to be or so many of the challenges. Not to say that I don't wish that I would know all of the things that I know now in the beginning, but what's your take on kind of first-time founders versus serial entrepreneurs from your experience?
Yeah, well, this is my second company, so I've been both a first-time entrepreneur and now a second-time founder. For me at least, both times were quite different. I think your naivety is kind of exists in unexpected ways, but I think being naive also means you're allowed to be optimistic about things that most people aren't. I know you've worked in a big company and people are always saying no to everything, right? And nothing is possible. And when you're in a company that's growing, 5%, 10% a year versus 5 or 10% a month, the reality is that there isn't much that you can do to kind of change those outcomes. So everyone's pessimism is very well founded. Mm-hmm. No, I love working with first-time entrepreneurs. If you kind of look out in the universe, all of the very largest companies, pretty much in technology at least, are founded by first-time entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of second-time founders, they optimize for companies that probably have like a lower ceiling of sorts, but or maybe a little bit more predictable, and that's kind of where your experience can work against you in a sense. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of that experience, because I believe I first learned about you guys through a podcast that you did called The Pitch.
Yeah.
And maybe that still haunts you to this day. I don't know, but tell me about the experience of raising money for the first time.
Raising money for the first time was, again, one of these situations that you don't ever anticipate or think that you're going to be required to do maybe until you become a CEO of a company. For me, it was a wild ride, from angel groups in the beginning to VC firms that we were maybe too early for. So really learning the ropes. I wish that I had a mentor in the beginning, really coaching me along that process and creating the strategy behind it. I would say most of the things through that first round of funding and that journey has taught me all the things that I do or don't do today. And really at the end of the day, we're both just looking for a match. I would say that leading with your gut or being highly aware of what your gut is telling you within meetings is probably the most critical part, and something you don't know until you just really experience it. I have found.
Can you dive more into that? I mean, give me an example of your gut sort of in the middle of a pitch.
Yeah. So I'll use the pitch as an example. There's a lot of times when you're drilling
sorry, because I know it, but maybe you should describe what the pitch is
sure.
for people that don't.
The pitch is a show based in New York by Gimlet Media that they have entrepreneurs come in and give their pitch to a series of judges. And then they will either invest or other potential investors will come in from that round. From my experience within that, I remember, I was excited. I used to live in New York 12 years ago. I remember going into the room and thinking, okay, well, they're going to listen to my idea, right? Like, what are they going to say? What are the questions? How can I prepare for it? And I had one of those like sparkling gut moments in that pitch with Charles from Precursor. So he had already understood our business model. Another current investor came in a little bit before them, and they tend to do some deals. So I don't know if it was maybe what he saw in me after first gut reaction, or because he knew so much of the context. But I think being authentic and listening to your gut is really what helped me win that pitch. I remember I think it was Charles specifically at one point, either on the pitch or shortly after, had asked me what my revenues were going to be within the first year. And my response to him was something like, good question, Charles. Do you want to come figure this out with me? What company have you invested in this stage that's actually been accurate on their projections? Which is probably not the pie in the sky answer that most founders know, that you have to get to X, Y, and Z criteria before you meet the next round. And so that gut feeling of when people are actually diving in, I remember Jesse Draper from Halogen Ventures did the same thing. I was in the middle of my pitch and so excited from she does kind of a pitch session, if you will, where you have a theme song where you walk up and kind of get into your groove. But I remember that she interrupted me the first minute and a half of my presentation, and it was strange, right? Because a lot of VCs expect you to just go give your Vanna White, and they're there to absorb and listen, and they get caught off guard if you ask questions. But it goes the same for founders. If someone's interrupting you during the presentation, I have learned that it's really because they're trying to understand your model and they really actually give a damn. Like Jesse interrupting me in the middle of a minute and a half into my presentation and asking because she genuinely was learning and understanding rather than just listening to me do my Vanna White, and maybe we're a fit, maybe we're not.
Yeah, makes sense. And tell me about, so you mentioned kind of learning sales, and you and I can agree raising capital is sales effectively, right? And I think we also share, we've had a lot of experience selling brands in particular and product founders on something. I mean, give me your sales playbook. What's sales 101 from Chelsea's perspective?
Yeah. I find that they're very, very different in raising versus selling to customers. In fact, I have more recently reminded myself, instead of giving answers, ask the right questions on sales cycles, because I have just finished a stretch of fundraising. And so VCs or an individual wants to know your answer quick, but in a sales perspective, it's more about getting them to open up and asking really good questions. What questions can you ask to find the right answers? And to answer probably your more original question on what is the sales playbook, first and foremost, I think it's aligning with their organization. If Beta says our most important thing is to, I'll use something crazy and fictitious right now. Our biggest initiative right now is to build, the biggest, craziest store and playhouse within it. We're not focused on anything else. Well, you probably don't care that much about on demand, or maybe you're not even doing that. So I think first and foremost, it's aligning on your initiatives. Why would they do this? And what's the consequence if they don't? Or what's the timeline associated? And then backing it up with, a solid business case and how we're both justifying this. At Shipsi, it's convenient that retailers or brands working with us can participate what they do towards their cost of shipping today. So pay the same as you do to FedEx, give it to your customers in 5, 10, 7 days. Or pay the same amount to Shipsi and empower your consumers to get it within an hour. So our business case, or that part of our business, tends to be pretty easy to justify. But you have to be in alignment. This is why I respect
about you so much, because you literally can't not sell your company every chance that you get. I mean, truly a master salesperson. I saw right away. You mentioned kind of asking questions, but never letting someone get away as well without driving them as well. Because I noticed that even when you're talking to us, you were driving me towards the direction where I could at least you could ask me the question about the things that your company kind of solves.
You caught on to it. I think that's an important piece, though, as well, because it's really finding real partners. Who are you going to work with? I think we've all in our careers leaned on and worked with good partners and bad customers, good customers and bad customers, or ones that cause maybe more harm. But it's really about that true partnership and seeing it like that, and understanding that it's not going to be perfect, but being honest enough and vulnerable enough through the experience to say, here's our mutual aligned goal that we're both trying to accomplish. Okay, let's both buy into that and create the strategy behind that and how we get there. But without a good partner doing that, or us supporting store associates, then neither one of us are going to be successful.
So I'm going to challenge you a bit, though, because you did say before you gave us this sales masterclass that raising money and enterprise sales are different, but I think pretty much everything that you laid out, in my experience at least, as you guys progress in fundraising journey, is also true in venture, right? Because you're also, like you mentioned, finding alignment, trying to understand this partnership. But I, you know, at least from what I found as well, is asking questions is a really, really great way to lead someone down the path of learning about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's dive in a little bit. Let's kind of switch directions a bit and talk about kind of the future of logistics. And tell me if you agree or disagree with the statement. Today, we're rapidly approaching a time when probably the majority of people, you know, at least who live in cities or in urbanized areas, will be able to get a product in an hour. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that in theory and in concept. Yes.
Okay. What about 15 minutes?
I don't see why not.
And 5?
5 seems a little dramatic. Yesterday, someone told me that they had diapers in 6 minutes, and I kind of questioned and poked around a little bit. But
so
yeah,
what needs to happen for most people to get delivery in 15 minutes for most of the things that they want, in your opinion?
You know, one, I think it's finding a true reliable partner and understanding your consumers. If you're selling, I don't know, bicycles and no one in that neighborhood or area is buying bicycles, then we're probably not going to get that many, right? So I think it's about understanding the consumer demand and what products are selling where. And really, that was one of the first things that drove me to Shipsi. And in fact, the day that I left corporate America was when I realized that we could have this aggregated data behind the scenes. And now we're finding that useful for store openings, store closures. And really, my background focused a lot on BI analytics within the retail space. So understanding what was selling through at a store and a SKU level versus maybe what a buyer was telling you what they wanted. And then empowering brands to go back and, you know, not cause a fight with their buyer, but give them really solid data and recommendations that they could take action on to grow both of their business.
What are your thoughts on kind of where the inventory is going to be? Because I feel like there's two directions. You have retailers like us who are, and we do carry inventory to be clear, but we've sort of from a narrative perspective always pulled in the direction of saying, why does frankly, like a retail space that's 3 blocks away from an industrial space is going to cost 3 or 4 times as much per square foot.
Yeah.
So does the inventory have to really be right there? I mean, what is your perspective on that?
Yeah, I firmly believe that retail will continue to focus on the Castlegate model or micro-fulfillment anywhere and everywhere. I also believe that there's a lot of opportunity, for any brand or retailer, and even inside Shipsi, something that we're really focused on this year is through partnerships with private and public warehouses, for example. So I think we're going to see a lot more public and private warehouses. I believe that a lot of the abandoned buildings in New York or retail store footprints might go through foreclosure and end up becoming these micro-fulfillment centers. And even given COVID, some of the things that we've seen or recommended to get creative and to be able to distribute goods is if a store is mandated to be shut down, having a store associate go there, for example, for 2 hours to be able to pick and pack and send, and we'll coordinate with the driver to have the driver at least there. So I think we'll start to see more and more of those alternative type solutions, as well as community aspects of it. So maybe local farmers markets or local small shops, but then it's more about the experience, or like walking into a beta. I'm going there because I want to play around and I want to feel the things and I want to see the latest and greatest. Or it will become more of a bread and butter items like my cleaning products and kind of that replenishment model. But there's also such a high new market approach or new market demand that I don't think anyone ever anticipated that came out of COVID. So example, my grandmother using the Target app, right? Never shopped online, never really focused any of her shopping online. And I just read something earlier last week that was 114 million new digital shoppers, meaning that the way that it was classified is people who are shopping for that category or vertical now digitally more often than going into a store. And so I think it's opened up this whole new world of new customers for brands and retailers. And I think that's had a big impact on some of the growth that we saw last year in e-com.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that specific stat is, like I did a clubhouse last week with a few other folks that have physical retail stores who are on the brand side, and a couple of them have had pretty strong kind of end of 2020 numbers in their stores. And that surprised me, but because when I kind of look at the data, I'm pretty convinced that we just went through a shift where a lot of people picked up new habits that they're not going to put down, and the store is going to have less traffic when things start to get back to normal, and probably significantly so, especially in demographics that were kind of that were kind of behind. So kind of on the topic of what does the post-COVID world look like? I mean, tell me, what does Shipsi look like in 5 years? What does retail look like in 5 years from your perspective?
That's a good question. I wish I had a magic crystal ball today to tell you. But I think that amongst the challenges that retail faced, and that you and I experienced as founders last year, even really put us in a position of strength. And I believe that it will really do the same thing for retail. So, a lot of retailers have either figured it out or they have gone bankrupt or hoping that they have more time. I read something that the average runway of a retailer was 19 days at some point last year. I think it was November timeframe, which is absolutely terrifying. But I think that like any founder or startup or retailers, we've kind of weeded out the ones that couldn't survive or maybe didn't have what it takes or other outside circumstances. So I think on the other side of it, all of us will be far stronger. For us in particular, we took a 2-year roadmap and expedited it in about 6 months. And while it was really hard, and while I empathize with retail that was shut down with mandated store closures, I mean, so were we at that time. But really, on the other side of it, I see it for anyone who has chosen to thrive, and really, really capitalize on the new market. We'll all be better on the other side of it, and even more strong.
Well, very, very wise words. Thank you so much, Chelsea, for joining me today. I hope you're right. I think you are. And I will see everyone next week for another episode of Founder Exchange.